Guy's walking along over a bridge and he sees another guy about to jump. So he runs over, he goes, don't do it, don't do it. And the guy who's about to jump goes, why not? He says, there's so much to live for. Well, what are you? Are you an atheist or do you believe in God? He goes, I believe in God. He says, well, are you Christian or Jewish? He goes, I'm Christian. He goes, well, are you Episcopalian or Protestant? He goes, I'm Protestant. And all along the other guy's thinking, me too, me too, me too. This is great. And he goes, are you Baptist or are you something else? He goes, no, I'm Baptist. He goes, me too. And the guy goes, that's fantastic. So are you original Baptist or Reformation? And the guy goes, Reformation. The guy pushes him. He says, die, heretic scum. Unity. So I want to start out by letting you guys know that I am not talking about the Unity Church. I am talking about the concept of unity and that there is a problem. I am not saying that unity is bad. I'm simply saying that there is a problem that we need to be fully conscious of, and when we're not, that's when that problem rears its ugly head. And here's the problem. Unity kills diversity. That every single time somebody stands up and goes, we need to have unity, that means they are standing up for something that they feel is right, which immediately makes others wrong. And in doing so, create a society where many of us have experienced having whatever shape we have, being somebody trying to, and sometimes it's ourselves, trying to push ourselves into a square peg to fit into the unity that somebody else created. Because, we want to go along. We want to get along. We want to be that person that, people goes with the flow. When somebody says to you, goes with the flow, you know what they're really saying? Go with my flow. Because certainly they're not going with yours, or they wouldn't be saying, hey, why don't you just go with the flow? And so there's all these times when unity really can get in the way of us being who we truly are and coming fully present into the world. And here's how that happens, is people forget that unity already exists. There is only one. First thing we say in treatment, there is only one. There is only one. There is only one. Inside this one is a diversity that is unbelievable and infinite and cannot be measured. And yet us, as individuals, try to fit into smaller and smaller groups. Here's some stats for you. Most black people are killed by black people. Most white people are killed by white people. Most Hispanics are killed by Hispanics. And most people who die in a car accident have that accident within 3 miles of their home. What does that tell you? It says sometimes unity that's created, that we see, that we want to join in on, may not be the best thing for us. That there's something larger there. There's something larger going on all the time. And every time somebody says, we should unify around this, we have should on ourselves and an entire civilization. And one of the things that we talk a lot about is do not should on others or ourselves. And yet, in unity, that's what has to happen. Because it doesn't leave room for diversity. So in the spiritual evolution that we are trying to create, that we are working to create, I'm not into the word trying, we are working and we are succeeding at creating a spiritual evolution in the world, that we are creating something new and different that has never been here before. It has to be willing to include everything, because everything is in that one, whether we like it or not. The thing people get, and There are all kinds of things that we unify around. Ask the majority of people in the LBGT community what they think of family values if it was their family that, cut them out because they came out of the closet. Or how many here were the black sheep of the family? All of a sudden, family values looks very different to you when you don't fit into the square peg that your family thinks you should have. So that unity doesn't work. Now let's talk about peace, because everybody loves the idea about unifying around peace. But the problem is how to do it, right? Because back in World War II, the way most British at that time wanted to find peace was to go to Hitler and say, please, we just want to be peaceful. We don't want to go to war with you. And this one guy, Winston Churchill, stands up and says, this isn't going to work. This won't give us peace. We actually have to go to war with this guy to get peace. There were people in World War II in America who wanted to stay out of World War II until, of course, the Japanese attacked, and then that changed everything. But up until that point, there were all these people who wanted to stay peaceful in a way that allowed Hitler to spread way more than he might have if we had gotten into that war sooner. Now, am I advocating war? No. I am advocating that peace looks very different to very different people. That peace is not one size fits all. And that in the end, the only size that actually fits peace is the peace that we find within ourselves. Gandhi learned this the hard way, right? He says, we're going to peacefully get rid of the British. And so everybody gets going on, we're against the British. That's another thing about unifying. Have you noticed it's way easier to unify against something than it is for something? History proves this out. Leaders take this on all the time. Any smart leader. Hitler was brilliant. He said, we're going to be against the Jews. They're the reason for all our problems. And the country, which was in such bad shape at that point, said, okay, this sounds like a solution. Let's go for this. Let's be against the Jews. Right? Unifying. We still have some of that even today in our own country, that unifying field of against the Jews, against the blacks, against immigrants coming into our country. That kind of stuff, it's prevalent. And the thing about being those people who are against stuff like that, if then you make a stand against them, you have made them stronger. Unifying against hate gives hate power. Now, how do I know that? Because what do we teach here? What we focus on, we give power to. What we focus on, we give power to. So when we unify against something, we have immediately given the power to the thing that we don't want. Here's another interesting fact. This is Black History Month. I don't know if you're aware of that. So I get all these news feeds every day on my computer when I first turn it on about great blacks throughout history. And today's feed was about inventors, great black inventors throughout history. And what astounded me about the list was how many of them were in the 30s and 40s, where the Ku Klux Klan was at its best and racism was at its highest. And yet those folks somehow came out on top of the game, not only changing our lives, but changing their own, because most of them turned out to be millionaires. How did they do that in that climate? They must have embodied something that was very, very different from all the other folks who kept being victimized. Because what we teach here is that it's an inside job. We do not teach, change your circumstances, change your life. We teach change your thinking, change your life. But that doesn't mean going around telling other folks to change their thinking, which is what we wind up doing so much of the time. Whenever we go to somebody else and go, you know, why are you thinking that way? Why are you acting that way? We are no longer doing what will change our lives the most, which is looking in here. It is amazing when we keep our focus here, what does change out here. And that's what people who are the exceptions to the rule throughout history have learned. They have learned this simple fact that if they stick to what they came here to do, they will be successful. They will rise above. South Africa changed because a man was willing to sit in prison for over 25 years, knowing that if he stayed on purpose inside, it would change outside. I mean, the amount of examples that we have throughout history around this are extraordinary. So when I look at what goes on in Washington today and the polarization, I find it hilarious. You know, I know a lot of people get upset about this stuff, but think about it. Each party, when they were against something, sticks together like glue. But the second they try to be for something, they fall apart. Diversity is key here to our lives. The ecosystem, scientists have been telling us for decades that the healthiest ecosystems are the ones with the most diversity. And yet, how do we accept diversity of racism? How do we allow people to be racist and yet still stand in a place where we know that what this is about is an inside job and not about changing them? How do you do that? And yet it's what's called for. It's what's called for in our lives today more than ever. Maybe not more than ever. I bet you every generation got up here and said that at some point or another. And so we don't want to be unifying against stuff. We want to be standing and becoming more and more the model of tolerance, acceptance, and knowing that there is one anyway, whether we do anything about it or not. Alan and I get together about once a week to talk politics. And anybody here who can keep politics to a light level is willing to join, is welcome to join us, because we really have fun with our conversations and really don't want somebody there who's not willing to have fun with it. So we come into the room, he thinks of himself as a conservative. I think of myself as a liberal on the edge of socialist. And we come together once a week, and we find that some weeks we can't find anything to argue about because we agree so much. And then other weeks we come together. I mean, the place we disagree the most is about the Obama and Trump presidency. Now, why do I bring this stuff up? Do I want to bring politics into what we're talking about here? No. I'm saying that if either of us took a stand for the unity of the conservative movement or the liberal movement, him and I would have missed out on all the fun we get to have together when we get together and talk about this stuff or anything else. That it is really easy to miss what already exists. The beauty of our conversations is that we get to stand for what we already know is that oneness, and so then we get to play in the diversity and not take it too seriously. Because if you take it too seriously, you have forgotten some of the basic tenets of what it is we teach here. And what are those? That to forget the truth in your hour of need means to abandon the truth in your hour of need is to not understand the truth. And what is the truth? That you are a powerful, creative, spiritual being who changes the circumstances of your life the more you embody what it is you want to embody about what you want to show up. the more you embody peace. So if you are outraged about racism and violence, you are not being peaceful. Now, I am not a person who condones violence. But I see that some people come into this world as warriors who want to express themselves that way, and I actually have a big enough space to allow for that. Now, those who come into this world as warriors who want to express their violence, if they come in disciplined, they wind up in the armed forces, or they wind up playing football, or some other sport where there's a lot of heavy contact. If they come in undisciplined, they wind up in a maximum security prison. Either way, they get to play out who they came here to be because they are now surrounded by those who are with them in that need for expression of violence. They get to do that in whatever way they decided to do that. Right? This is what's really possible when we start looking at how, and if I was to change anything about the armed forces, it would be to make training tougher. Because and then give people the right to change their mind. Because they realize this really isn't what they're after. But my guess is if people had an opportunity to change their minds, those who went to war would not be the ones who came back mentally afflicted by it. They'd be the ones who actually thrive there, because there are people in this world, believe it or not, who thrive in war, who thrive in it. Not everybody. It's not for everybody. It's not for me. I'm not going to war. Well, I'm 62 now. They wouldn't have me anyway. But there are those who thrive under those kinds of conditions. They are made for that stuff. The people who come to this world who are made to be police. Imagine a world, let's say we unified around having no disease in life. Then what are all the doctors going to do? They come into this world going, what do I do now? Now, there is evolution. We do evolve certain aspects of the archetypes that exist, but there's something basic in all of them that needs a place in life. Not for others to be judging them as wrong. Not for others to be shooting on them. Life is supposed to be diverse. Life is supposed to be open. Life is supposed to allow. But when we go against something, we have actually given what we don't want power and brought it closer to our own lives, which is the last place you want it. If you're against war, you're actually creating war and bringing it closer to home. If you want peace, embody peace and live that peaceful life, and then it moves it further away. Now, I'm not saying that we should be so ethnocentric that we shouldn't care about what's happening in other places in the world. I'm not saying that either. I am saying that there's more going on than meets the eye. That if we're going to unify around something, let's do it fully conscious. Let us evolve what it is that we think is our limitations around what we think should be the way of things. Since I was young, the only women, girls, and then women I ever dated were hippies. Now go figure. You look at me, maybe you don't see the fact that I was very deep in the hippie culture back in the 60s and 70s. Maybe it doesn't show it all. I don't know. And so all the girls I dated were hippies. And one of the big tenets of hippiedom is no makeup. I never dated anyone who wore makeup. That was because they weren't in my tribe. And then all of a sudden, One day I meet my wife, who at that point wasn't my wife, and I'm blown away by this woman, and she wears makeup. It would have been really easy for me to go, nah, she wears makeup, I'm not doing this. And what I would have missed out on in terms of the magnificence that is my life now if I had turned away because she didn't fit into the unity that was the tribe that I thought I, needed to stay in. Now, the funny part is when we first started dating, because she knew about my, thing about makeup, she stopped wearing it. And I thought that was so cool. But then one day she comes to me, I'm not being myself. Myself likes to wear makeup. And if you're going to like me, you're going to have to like me the way I am, not trying to fit into your square peg. I was doing it. Here, the guy who is the out-of-box thinker, who's like doing all this stuff, never been close to a square, going near anybody else's square hole, was holding my wife in a square hole. And I didn't even know it till she came to me and said, hey, you're holding me in a square hole. I wear makeup. And all I can think about is the incredibleness I would have missed out on if I wouldn't have allowed her to be her and still been open to the diversity that was the unity that was our relationship. What so many groups are yet to figure out is that there is a diversity in every unity. And the more we can embrace the diversity within the unity, the more fully conscious and the more spiritually we evolve. This is what's really possible for us, to evolve into a world of acceptance and tolerance, that the unity that we're looking at is one that allows for anybody to be doing what it is theirs to do, to encourage folks to lift up into who they truly are. Not just coming out of the closet, not just wearing makeup, but, if you want to go play football, play football. If you want to be in the armed forces, be there. If whatever your thing is that brings you, if you want to be a makeup artist, you want to be an actor, you want to be a musician, that the more we can support people in finding the hole they actually fit in, the happier everybody is. People thrive, absolutely thrive, when they are in their right place, when their architect is what is forward, when they are living that particular way of being. It doesn't always look exactly the way they thought it would look. I know way too many artists who are hurting because they're not making a living at their art, rather than loving their art and allowing the money to come where it does, which may then ultimately lead to them making a living at their art, but by limiting themselves because they want to join this group that makes a living at their art. And they feel left out of it if they're not, right? Because that's another side of it, is how we feel when we feel left out of a group. Let's stop doing that to people. Let's encourage people to be themselves instead of feeling left out because they don't fit. Now, I know most of those who show up here are misfits. I know I am. So let's make sure that we're not then, like I was with Ash, setting up a situation where then we're creating square pegs for people to have them somehow fit into our world. Alan and I get along so well because we're not doing that to each other. We're letting each other be and just sharing our views. And that's actually fun and diverse, because there's a lot of fun in diversity. I got to tell you, diversity is fun the more I learn about it. Now I've got this wife who dresses fancy and does all this stuff, and I get to look at her and go, wow, that's a starlet. And that's a very different type of woman than I've ever been with before, and I'm like loving this whole new part of my life. And that's what's available, is an entirely new part of your life when you start being with the idea that if somebody's diverse, they may have something to enrich you with. Amen. If they're not in your unity, they can enrich you. And you can enrich them, not by trying to should on them or convince them to be like you, but by just sharing who you are where they share who they are. This is an enriching possibility. And so what we want to do here is allow ourselves to reach out, reach within, reach out in the allowance, in the opening of this can be enriching. This can be an opening to a possibility we never even imagined. So if you've got to be in unity, allow for the diversity, allow for the enriching, and that's where spiritual evolution exists. Thank you. All right, take out what you're going to give. Hold it in your hand. Open it up. Don't crinkle it. Open it up. This is God. This is power. What you are giving out here is setting something in motion that will return to you. This is important. How you give this. It isn't just that you give. It's how you give that allows for something to come back in blast, in motion, in bigness. The bigger you give, the bigger you receive. This is how the law of circulation works. Let's say this together. God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What we give, we receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am. And so it is.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of